Hi everyone, my name is Karen, this is my channel RatherBeReading, and today I'm bringing to you a recent reads video. It has been a week since I last filmed a recent reads video. I've read 5 books this week, a little bit lower than usual, but there is a reason for that, which will become evident as we go through. So let's just jump straight in and talk about all the 5 books that I did manage to complete this week. So first I finished The Funhouse by Dean Koontz. This was a reread. So I've talked about this a couple of times on my channel. Funhouse by Dean Koontz is the first horror book that I ever remember reading. So I read this when I was probably around 11, and I remembered, it's one of those books that some particular details have stuck with me over time because I read it so young and because it was the first book in that genre that I'd ever read. And it made me feel very adult to be reading it. So quite a few like details of the book stuck with me. But I don't think I had read this since I was like 11. And so it was interesting to reread this. So I'm actually just, I don't even know what's actually, I didn't read the synopsis because I knew what it was about because I'd read it before. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out what the synopsis gives away. It's kind of hard to explain what this is about. So we basically follow a teenage girl named Amy and a preteen boy. I think Joey is like 10. Does it say how old he is? No, it doesn't. Or somewhere around there. They're brother and sister, and a carnival comes to town, and there's a fun house, and creepy stuff starts to happen, but it's all, well, creepy stuff happens, but it's all tied into secrets from their mother's past, which I don't know how big of a secret it is because you get the whole backstory of the mom in like the prologue at the start. You get what the mom did. So I'm just going to tell you because it's in the prologue. So the mom was married to a carny. The word carny is used a lot in this. I don't know if that's considered to be offensive, but it's used in here a lot. So she's married to a carny. She's very young. She's like 19 or 20 or something like that. And she's married to a carny. She's had a very, got married to him. It was a whirlwind romance. Got married to him very quickly. Has been traveling around with him at this carnival. The relationship is not what she thought it was going to be. It has become quite abusive. And she gets pregnant and she ends up having this baby that ends up being, I don't even know how to put this politely. It's deformed, it's got issues, but like demon type issues. Like it's not a demon, like it's never said in here that it's a demon, but it's like she's scared of the baby. It's got claw type things. It's got a lot of hair on it, like, which is a thing that can happen to babies. Oh, I'm getting a low power warning. This happens to me every time I film. Which is a thing that can happen to babies. So anyway, she at the beginning of the books had this baby. She's terrified of the baby. And she ends up, like, she keeps thinking about, she's trying to like work herself up to kill the baby because she thinks it's evil. And then she basically tries to kill the baby, and then the baby tries to kill her. It's a baby. And then she ends up killing the baby. And the carny that she's married to is devastated by this because he loved the baby. And he, and her split, and he basically puts like, not curses her, but says like, when you have children, I'm going to find those children and I'm going to make you pay. Any future children that you have are going to pay for what you've done to my son. And it's then shoot forward however many years it is, and she's now got these 2 children, Amy, who's like 17, I think she's in like about to graduate high school, and Joey, like I said, who's like 10, and the carnival comes to town. That's basically what this is about. Wow, that was a long-winded synopsis. So, and this isn't like super long. I think this is like just over 300 pages. Because like, look at the spacing on this. The borders are massive. This, and it's quite large print. Anyway, so fun fact, I realized, so I've seen the movie of this. There is a movie, and I had seen the movie. I read the book obviously first. I read the book when I was like 11, and then recently, and I didn't know that the the movie, sorry, was based on this. Well, we'll get to that in a second. When I watched it and I was just watching the movie and I was like, wait, this is a really kind of familiar type of plot. And then I like looked it up on IMDb and realized that yes, it is based on this. Or so I thought. So then when I was reading this, I realized that this is actually a novelization of the movie. So what happened was, and it wasn't originally released under Dean Koontz' name, it was originally released under Owen West. So Dean Koontz had been publishing books. He wasn't very successful. It was early on in his career. And basically he was asked to write a novelization of this screenplay. Like the movie wasn't out or anything yet. And he needed money. Like I said, he wasn't that successful yet. And he agreed to do it. And then just through turn of circumstances, the book ended up being released before the movie. Even though the movie like kind of came first, like the screenplay for the movie came first, but there was a delay in releasing the movie, which meant that the book came first. So, all right, so that becomes relevant to my thoughts a little bit later on. So, and they end up being quite different, which again, we'll kind of get into. So this was fun to reread, but this is not a very good book. In my opinion, it's got a lot of problems. It falls into a lot of typical kind of, when was this originally published? I think it would have been in the 80s. 1980. So it falls into a lot of horror tropes, like not good horror tropes. Like there's a lot of demonizing of women's sexuality. You know, all of the female characters are basically either a nympho or a nun. There's no kind of in-between or layered characters. And any woman who's like very expressive of her sexual desires always ends up being a victim. You know, that type of horror trope. Also, the carnival, that's such a fun, creepy premise. The carnival is hardly in this. You get the bit very like prologue with the mum at the carnival, but that's not really involving the carnival. It's just her with the baby and then him getting angry and then kicking her out. And then the actual carnival doesn't come to town until like the last third of the book. The part where they go to the carnival and everything kind of kicks up is not till like the last third. So there's really not that much of the carnival. I also don't think this is very good depiction or representation of children born with disabilities. And it's not, I don't think it's accurate. I mean, it's hard to say whether it's good representation because I don't know whether it was trying, like it's not trying to do, but it's just very much showing that like if you have a baby like with like deformities in this way, that like the baby's evil. Like, it's not great. Like I said, and then there's demonizing of women's sexuality and all of that. And then, so I wasn't like super in love with this book. And then you get to the end part, like, so the afterword after the book, and it's Dean Koontz. So this edition was published in 1992, so 12 years after the book came out. And you get Dean Koontz talking about, like I said, that's where I got the information about that the movie came out first. And the book ended up becoming a lot more of a commercial success than the movie. I think partly because the book came out first, like I said, it ended up coming out first, and it was actually quite popular. It sold a lot better than they expected. So then when the movie came out, people were like, yes, the movie of this book has come out. And then they went to see the movie and they are quite different. So when people went to see the movie, they were really, really disappointed, which meant that the movie ended up being quite a flop and the book ended up being quite popular. But he like kind of shits all over the movie in this afterward, which I just think is pretty rude because you didn't come up with this premise like at all. Like the only reason that this book exists is because of that movie. And so yeah, I didn't love that afterward then either. It seemed kind of rude. I don't know how to put it. Anyway, I've been talking about this for way too long. I've been talking about this for like 7 minutes or something already, which is ridiculous. I thought I've only read 5, this would be a quicker video. Evidently not. I gave this 2.5 stars. It definitely had some problems. Let's try to get through the rest of these quickly. I then read Dirty Little Secrets by Jo Spain. This is a book that I received a digital copy free for review off NetGalley. This is a thriller. This follows, it follows a small little community in Ireland. I believe it's Ireland. So there's like 7 houses or whatever in this gated type of community. And one of the people who lives there is a woman. She lived alone. She was like in her early 50s, I think. She's living alone and her body has been decomposing in her, is that my hair? oh my God. Her body has been decomposing in her flat or whatever for like 2 months or 3 months or whatever, like for a while. I can't remember how long it is. And the community says like how close they are and everything, but then no one realized that this woman was dead and that her body was decomposing. And it's kind of like a look at the little community and you know, all the secrets in amongst them and you know, all of that. So it's kind of got a closed door mystery type aspect in it, and that you're kind of just looking at everyone from in the different houses. So there's like the 7 houses. So you've got the 7 type of families. Like there's 2 single guys. There's like 2 like couples with children, and then like a single mom and a teenage daughter, and then an older couple. In addition to the dead woman. Now, having said that, the one thing I found very like interesting right off the bat is that you get the murdered woman's perspective, which is interesting. So I was very intrigued at the start of the story. It's definitely not the type of book to read if you need characters to kind of root for, characters that you like, because there's no real likable characters for the most part in here. Everyone has, you know, their own dirty little secret, so to speak. I don't know what it was about this book. I didn't love it the way that I wanted to, and I can't really put my finger on what it was. I just wasn't engaged in the story the way that I wanted to be. I was never really sure what was going on, which is a good thing, but for some reason I just wasn't engaged. Normally when I don't know what's going on, I really love that, but for some reason I just couldn't get into this the way that I wanted to. I quite liked the ending. Like I said, I quite liked the ending, and I didn't really know what was happening, so really it should have gotten a lot higher rating than what it did, but there was just something about it that just didn't engage me in the story. And so I ended up giving it 3.25 stars. So there's that. I then read, oh, I've got it here, Her Fearful Symmetry by Audrey Niffenegger. So Audrey Niffenegger is the author of The Time Traveler's Wife. It's definitely the book that kind of put her on the map. I think that actually might have been her debut. Anyway, this is very different from that. So this follows a set of twins. They're mirror twins, which means that they're like literally like an exact reverse. So like if one's got a little mole here, the other one's got it on the other side, including down to that one of them's like heart is on the wrong side of her body, and like her heart's reversed. So like one of them's got a few more health problems than the other due to like being a mirror twin. I don't know if that's a real thing or whatever, but that's what they are in the book. And their mother was also a twin, and however the mother and her twin sister had become have been estranged and haven't seen each other in years and years and years. And the mother's twin dies at the very start of the story. And she was living in London and leaves her apartment, like her flat, as you would call it in the UK, to the twins. And she leaves it to them. They're 20 and then they turn 21 kind of right at the start. She leaves the flat to them with like several rules that they like can't ever let the mother and the father go into the flat or anything like that. The girls end up deciding they want to live in the flat, and so they move to London to move into the flat, and the flat borders Highgate Cemetery, and then some kind of haunting type stuff starts to go on. I don't know how much is in the synopsis, but that's all I'm going to tell you. So this got off to quite a promising start because the setting is really nice. Like I really liked being set in London in this like flat bordering Highgate Cemetery. The setting was really cool, and then the story just like plods along and nothing is really happening. The middle part of the book is just very boring. Like there's just hardly anything going on. And then I really didn't like the end of this book either. So I was quite bored, and then we get to the end and I was just like, okay. There's 2 characters in here that I feel like were inserted in here just purely so to put a little bit of like happiness into the story, because it's a pretty depressing story. I feel like they were inserted in there just for that. I don't know, I just didn't like this. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars as well. I then read Dream with Little Angels by Michael Hybert. So this is, I've talked about this, mentioned this before, that this is the first book in a series, and I actually have the third book from NetGalley, and when I went to read it, I realized that it was the third in a series, and my library does have the books, so I got Dream with Little Angels as the first, so I got it out from my library so that I can read the first two before I proceed to the third one that I have from NetGalley. So this first book, so it's a mystery set in a small town in Alabama where 12 years previously, a little girl went missing, and she was missing for a little while, and then her dead body was found beneath this willow tree. And that was 12 years prior, and now another little girl has gone missing, and then like a week later, another little girl goes missing. So it sounds like kind of your typical like crime mystery, which it kind of is, but the different like twist on this one is that it's told from the perspective of Abe, who is the main, like is one of the police detectives in this small town, which I think the series follows her, but this book, I don't know about the other books, but this one is told from the perspective of Abe, who is her 11-year-old son. And I thought that was a really fun twist on it, and I know that books told from children's perspectives is not a lot of people's favorite thing, but I thought this was pretty well done. I really thought it was an authentic voice, in my opinion, of like an 11-year-old boy, without being really annoying to read. Like, I thought there was like some really like funny, like not laugh out loud funny, but just some like, that's definitely the way like an 11-year-old boy would see things. And I like that because obviously he's 11 and he doesn't understand the way the world works in some ways. He would say, oh, the person said this. I don't really get why they were saying that. But you know, because he doesn't get it. So I liked that it seemed like an authentic voice. And I really quite enjoyed this. I liked the characters, I liked the setting, I liked the mystery, I liked the plot. So I quite enjoyed this. The only thing that I will say about this that like took some like points away from it, so to speak, is that there's some very unrealistic things that go on in this book due to the fact that it's told by an 11-year-old boy. So the mum like takes him to some crime scenes and stuff at some points and stuff like that, and I was just like, I'm sorry, who is taking their 11-year-old son to a crime scene to see a dead body? I just don't buy it. And then even if you were going to do that, because he's been greatly affected by the disappearances of the girls, particularly the second girl who went missing, because he saw her in the street like that morning right before she went missing, and so he's really affected by it. And so the mum's like, oh, he's so invested like in this, it's important to him. I think it's important for him to see the body, which already I'm not buying, but I'm like, okay, even if you were going to do that, even if that's like a thing that was going to happen, then there's other points later on where she's like she picks him up from school and she's been like checking areas for something, and so she takes him with her to like check the next, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, is that like appropriate? Like, you're a police detective, you're not supposed to take your kid along like on crime scene searches with you and stuff like that. It just, there was stuff like that I was just like, even though I was really enjoying the story, I was just like, come on now. I know we've got to put him into these situations because he's the narrator and we need him there so we can know what's happening, but it's not necessarily believable. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I did really, really enjoy it, but you got to kind of be prepared to not buy everything necessarily that's going on. So then the final book that I read this week, which is the reason that I only read 5 books this week, is that I read Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. I listened to this on audio. It is narrated by Paul Bomer, and it took me 5 days to get through this audiobook, hence why I didn't get through as many books, because I only listened to one audiobook this whole week, because the audiobook for this third book in the Farseer trilogy is 37.5 hours long. I think the book itself is 830 pages, somewhere around there, so it's a really long book. I probably could have got it done in 4 days, but there were a few days where I didn't get as much audiobook listening in as I normally would, and so it took me the whole week to read. So how did I feel about this book? I have very, very mixed opinions on this book. So as I've said with every book so far in this Farseer trilogy, Robin Hobb's books are just too long. And I was already said that about the first 2, and then this book is significantly longer than the first 2. And it's not that like I don't enjoy long books sometimes, but there's just so much in this book that I just don't think needs to be in there. There are several different journeys, like physical journeys that the characters go on in this book, and you literally get every day of the journey pretty much. Like, we woke up that morning and we had our breakfast, and then we were trudging along this path, and then this happened on this day, and this happened, and then we made camp, and it was my turn to do first watch, and then we had first watch, and then this person took a watch, and then I struggled to sleep that night because of this reason, and then we got up the next day and did it all again, and you hear about it all again the next day. And it's just like, I don't need that level of like day-to-day goings on. It just becomes really tedious. Having said that, by this stage, you have read, particularly because the books are so long, you have read a lot about these characters by this point. I am very invested in these characters at this point. I teared up like 5 different times in this book from like stuff that was going on, because I'm just like so emotionally invested in these characters' lives. So that's good. So at first I was like, oh, maybe I'll give this a slightly higher rating than I gave the first 2. I was thinking like maybe a 3.75 as opposed to a 3.5. Then the ending happened. And so all of this book, and then the last, so 37 hours of audiobook, and then the whole entire ending basically takes part in like the last hour and a half of a 37.5-hour audiobook. So the ending, after all this build up, was just kind of, we're done. And I was like, what? Like that? And I didn't like the ending. I'm just going to be honest as well. I'm not super into the way that this book ended, this series ended. And it was just so much build up just for so little payoff, and then it just, like I say, I did enjoy so many parts of it, like the parts where stuff was really happening, because like I said, I am so invested in the characters. So in the end, I decided to just give it a 3.5-star rating, which is the same rating that I gave the other 2 books. Like I said, I do think that the parts of this that I enjoyed, I did enjoy more than the other 2 books, but I still had problems with it. I am planning to read on to Robin Hobb's next trilogy, because she has like, I think 4 or 5 different trilogies that are all their own trilogies, but they take part in like a larger world, which is called The Realm of the Elderling like series. So all of these series make up like a larger series, and so the next series is the Live Ship Trader trilogy, I think it's called. The first book is Ship of Magic, and I'm definitely interested in reading that, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that the narrator in that book, the main character, is a girl, which I'll be interested to see from a female main character's perspective in that book. And so I'm interested in reading on. So I will, like I said, I don't hate these books. Obviously, like a 3.5 rating across the board is like fairly decent. It's just, I just think that there's so much unnecessary content in these books. And I know that fantasy is known for like being really long, but I'm like, is this necessary? Does this need to be put in? Can't we just like take all this unnecessary shit out and have a 600-page book instead of an 800 and almost 850-page book? Like, is that not a thing that we could do? Apparently not. So yeah, those are my thoughts. And just very quickly to touch on what I'm currently reading, I am currently reading The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torr. I started this yesterday. I'm on page 128. This is about how many pages? It's about 340 pages, so I'm like a third of the way through, thereabouts. This is like a sexy thriller. It's known to be like a sexy thriller. I'll obviously get into more details of it in my next recent reads video, or possibly, no, it'll be in my next recent reads video. But it's supposed to be like a sexy thriller, and I like the premise, but so far I'm finding this a little bit slow. So I'll be interested to see how the last part of the book goes, but that is what I'm currently reading. So that's it, you guys. Those are the 5 books that I've read over this past week. I'm not going to give a Newts update, to be honest, because I forgot to write down what Newts I did this past week, but we are right at the end of the month. Like, it's the 30th today, so there's only, sorry, it's the 31st today. And so I will just give an overall wrap up for the month and my Newts readathon in my August wrap up. So stay tuned for that if you want to find out how I ended up doing overall. So that is it. Those are the books that I read. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, or what you guys have been reading over this past week. If you read anything great, I would love to chat about it. Please like this video if you liked it. Please subscribe if you want to see more from my channel. That is all I have for this video today. Bye, guys.